Well, Mitch, welcome.
Terry,
You're
thank you.
my next victim as I'm going around and doing all these interviews. So first off, I want to start with saying congratulations. I like to start
Thank you.
every one of these calls
Cheers.
that way. Um, this is not an easy task by any means. Might be easier for you than some others. I mean, you
Uh,
you, you have,
mm-mm. No, no.
but we did kind of run you guys through the gauntlet, made you do 6 and 7 back to back, and we really asked a lot out of you guys to actually not just do the exam, try to pass it, get through it, same as everybody else has to do, but um, we also wanted you guys to scrutinize it. Is this what we see in front of our customers? Is this what we need to put out? Are we testing the right depth? Um, are we does it feel like we're tricking anybody? Because I want that stuff out of the system altogether. So much appreciated and much earned. Congratulations on that. So why don't you start by just a little bit? Who are you? Where'd you come from? How'd you get here? When'd you start at Arista? Those kind of things.
Oh
Let everybody
boy,
know a
the
little
the
bit of who you
journey.
are.
Who am I? Let's see, where'd I come from? So let's see. Mitch Vaughan, hello world. Network and automation enthusiast. My goodness. Where did I start off with this? Let's see. Probably it says back in high school, I was like, you know what? I want to work in computers. And so I knew pretty early what I wanted to do. And nothing motivates quite like having a use case. And effectively, me and some of my buddies, there was a computer class, and we just found ways to circumvent the system and have these massive LAN parties in the school playing Counter-Strike, kind of dating myself there. We'd network all the computers together, figure out ways around any like protections I had in place, and have at it. So started learning this stuff to effectively play games at school.
There you
And
go.
then from there, just kind of fell in love with the whole technology thing and never looked back. From there, I'd say I went to work at a computer repair shop for a little while. And then after that, ended up at a car dealership. It was actually pretty massive, like 6 sites. And I did everything from dot matrix printer support to, managing the WAN. And so it's kind of a jack of all trades type thing. It was a lot of fun. And then I made the jump into the VAR space for a little while. Windows Server, VMware, Exchange Server. Again, dating myself a little bit there. Yeah. And then after that, jumped to the customer side of the house for a while. I spent a lot of time in the financial vertical, which is a fantastic way to learn multicast. It's like, hey,
Yep.
by the way, we kind of need this. Good luck. And so spent a lot of time on the financial side of the house, working for a bank, a couple different banks, and just continue to fall in love with networking. And then after that, jumped over to the VAR space. One of the VARs that I worked at, someone brought up this little thing called Arista. I was like, yeah, okay, it's kind of interesting. I guess I'll take a look at it. Looked at it, was like, okay, there is something to this. This is pretty awesome.
Right.
And then, but at that point in time, right, I'm still, I got my, I was very OEM aligned and loyal. I wasn't really interested in other things that were out there. But there was one of my friends, Chris Kane, asked me one time, do you want to be a network engineer or an OEM engineer? And I had no response. And I was like, that's a really good point. Okay. Game on. So then I jumped in, learned more about Arista, the protocols, and just in general, embraced the whole thing, fell in love with it, and eventually a position opened up, and I threw my name in the hat, and by chance, they brought me on board, and it's been an absolute blast being a part of
When was that?
Arista since joining back in 2018. So it's a little over
2018.
5 years at this point.
Yeah. When did you come on in 2018?
It was the end of April. I still call it May 1st, 2018.
Okay, so you're over 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hit it in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
Like early October makes 5 years for me too.
Hey.
But no, it is interesting. It's a very similar journey. And it's funny you said that about multicast. I remember showing up at Merrill Lynch, Bank of America now, and the job was for data center architect, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what is a data center architect? Like that wasn't really a thing yet. It's like
Yeah.
I'm a route and switch guy. I know Catalyst. I know all these different things, but what the hell is a data center architect? And because most of my career at that point, data center was just a closet. And then I came in, same thing. I've been teaching like CCIE courses, in that track for a while, multicast being one of them, actually helped develop the multicast course for Cisco and was out there doing that. So I thought I was a multicast god. I was like, I know this stuff. This is easy. I get to Merrill Lynch and I meet a guy that he's long since moved on, but sit down and start looking at the configuration for that and go, okay, yeah, I didn't know you could do this. Like okay, so I don't know anything about multicast, and because man, what a freaking world to get in and deal with high level multicast design and doing that. And I'm glad I knew it. I'm glad I learned it. I'm glad I was there. It definitely made my career. It was a big kickoff point for me. But my God, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, as I was going to say, it's also a great way to clear a room. If you want some space,
yes.
just to be like, hey guys,
yes.
I got a multicast problem. You're going to be the only person left in that room.
Right? I remember maybe one teaching other people that, and teaching it was always interesting. If you're young and new, it's fine. I could just teach you a little bit. If you're old, I'm like, no, seriously, stand on your head, upside down. I'm going to spin you around and then make you get drunk. And then we can start talking about multicast because now you got the right perspective.
Yep.
Because that's how it looks compared to everything else you've learned and mastered in networking. You got to think about it completely backwards. But it's interesting how we stumble across those things that kind of make our careers as you go.
Yes.
So what did you do? You came on as SE when you first started?
Yeah.
What was your role when you first started?
Yeah, so I came on as an SE, just kind of, out there, focused primarily in the Ohio Valley, and just kept on learning the EOS, learning the Arista ecosystem, evangelizing, doing Arista test drives, which are these events where we kind of get like labs and present to people around the different protocols and EOS, and everyone gets a live lab. They're a lot of fun. We did a ton of those. We ended up finding ways to keep the events engaging and fun. So I know that one of the things we do is we have a gaming lounge that we went and ripped out all their infrastructure, right? And we installed some Arista gear, and we host a lot of events now at the gaming lounge, which is always a good time. I am clearly a bit of a gamer, so got the little displays in the background. It's like a video card, all that fun stuff. But it's engaging, right? Because you can learn the protocol, you can have some fun. So I had a lot of fun as an SE, kind of getting out there, meeting people, seeing different environments, different perspectives on things. And then from there, many hats at Arista. One of the things I love about Arista is that you are effectively in control of your own destiny. The things like something that you're interested in, you want to go tackle it, go take it on. Maybe something will come of it, maybe it won't. But you got the freedom to go, jump in. And jumping into like EVPN VXLAN and doing the webinars and helping out with, authoring the deployment guides and doing advanced routing ATDs and participating in the EANTC, the interop event over in Europe in Berlin. Mm-hmm. Doing automation workshops. We've been touring the country doing those recently. All these things are up for grabs to do. It's really just a matter of managing your time appropriately. But there is no better place to be able to just jump into things that interest you and simultaneously have an impact than at Arista.
Yeah, I mean, I always laugh, like, what's the job that you get paid for? And then what are the other jobs you have that you don't get paid for? We kind of have that world here, but it is a cool thing that, I without a doubt, I have no problem saying this over and over and over to people. Biggest concentration of the smartest amount of people I've ever seen in any one spot. And have been in some pretty big spots over my career and been around some pretty smart teams. And I will say the sheer numbers that we have hired here you start here 5 years ago. I can remember coming here in 5 years ago that EVPN was still, it was a scary 4 letters to most SEs in the company. We weren't really telling it to customers. We were still doing CVX. We were still doing some other things that we were doing at the time, kind of pushing that. We had a few customers that were starting to seed into it, but now, without a doubt, I don't know that we have very many customers that were not leading with EVPN. It's gotten that mainstream, and dude, at 5 years you started, and now you're, without a doubt, you're kind of known around the company. And I know you're not going to say this, so I'm going to say it for you. You're kind of known around the company as being a go-to guy on EVPN. I mean, the design guide you built, masterful. It's great. I mean, I've absolutely plagiarized the hell out of it for a lot of the training stuff that we have. Like, it's great content, great, and you know, and you are one of those resources to go back, and that says a lot about Arista and the culture, that you could go from, you start at the time when the protocol is first kicking off. I mean, EVPN's been around forever. I'm not saying it just started 5 years ago, but how we're using it in the data center mainstream, that really didn't start to about 4 years ago, maybe even 3.5 years ago, when it started really getting hot. And in that amount of time, you jump on and become an expert on it. I've never seen places where that's that easy for that to happen.
Yeah.
And yes, it's you, and that says a lot about you, Mitch. You're a very smart dude, but it could have been anybody in that realm either. Anybody could have stepped up and grabbed the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that, everything. It's one of the things that kind of drew me in after learning, do you want to be an OEM engineer or a network engineer? Was everything, thus far at Arista, my travels has been, standards-based protocols, drafts and standards, no real secret sauce like, we're the only ones to support this particular protocol, boom, this point product. It's not really a thing. So it's definitely helpful. Anyone can go out there and just kind of read the drafts or spin up some labs, play around, learn it. But yeah, it's a testament to it, in my travels at Arista, the freedom to go explore, try things, see if you can have an impact. But you brought up something a second ago that is also very much true, is also just the concentration of very smart people that are also very willing to help, and a incredible, still just mind-blowing absence of egos. That's just floors me to this day. I mean, like EVPN, for example, shout out to Alex Nickel, Russ Kelly at Arista. I can't thank them enough for helping bring me up to speed and continuing to teach me like new things. There's stuff they know that I'm like, how did you know that? Like, how anything comes up, they're like, oh, I know that. Jeez, wow, it's impressive. But they're both super, really humble, great guys, and that's just consistent at Arista. That's a small sample of just like copy and paste that same mentality across the company. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, no, I love it, dude. I get to see that. I get to see that perspective across the board globally, and it's a true statement everywhere. I mean, it's we're still a company, we're still a corporation, we still got growing pains. There's still things that many of us don't like about the company, things like this. Like anywhere you go, I mean, you're not going to put a group of humans together and they're not going to bitch about something. It's just how we do as people. But comparatively speaking, by far one of the coolest places I've worked, because I don't know, I'm a very big purpose guy. Early in my career, joined special forces, go out and do that. I'm all about flag and apple pie and all those kind of things. I latch into those purposes, and I worked around some of our competitors for a very long time, inside the doors and outside the doors, and helped grow them, and enjoyed that. But sometimes it's really hard when you're just like, I just don't think this product's going to work. And that's one thing I've really enjoyed about here is, man, it's easy to be good when the product that you're shuffling is actually reliable. It's going to do what you tell people it's going to do.
Yeah.
I think it's cool that 5 years, you've really kind of focused in on a lot of EVPN, and you can latch into that because we're still going to be doing this in 20 years.
Yes.
It's a scalable protocol. It's a stable protocol. We weren't looking for fancy. We were looking for how to solve it. And I think that simplicity sometimes is what I enjoy about working here too. Is, I mean, you look at these things, and I tell people all the time, every exam we have is open book, but we still fail about 40% of the people that take the exam. No trick questions, open book, and we fail 40%. Why is that so? Because BGP, EVPN, VXLAN, it's hard. I don't need to add anything to it. It's hard. I came from the realm where BGP could be an entire career. You only needed to learn one protocol, and you could have a 30-year career. That's it. That's all you needed, one protocol. Switching used to be the same way. So why make it more complicated? You don't need to go out and learn every little nook and cranny. I mean, EVPN has been around for a long time. It's stable. BGP is there. It's going to do what it's doing. And we are getting into the idea that simple is cooler, because simple allows you to automate. Automate allows you to get to the point where, what's the next step? AI is coming around the corner. Soon, Mitch, we get to talk to the network and communicate with it, and it talks back to us. And you can't do that if it's complicated.
Unless you're like, go configure multicast. Blue screen. It will have its limitations. Job protection.
Without a doubt. So, what was your kind of certification experience in the past? You do any of the experts for anybody else? Where you're at?
Yeah. So I, along my travels, picked up CCIE and route switch and data center and service provider as well. So kind of did over a 3-year span. So a bit of a glutton for punishment in those 3 years. But it was fun. Learned a whole bunch of stuff about different protocols and whatnot. And don't regret a minute of it. Absolutely enjoyed going through the process. But outside of that, I would say then, of course, the level 7. Very proud to have accomplished this. Had a good time going through that curriculum, which I'm sure we'll dive into as we progress here. But those are the other 3 expert level certifications I've obtained. There are some older ones like MCSE track for Exchange. That's dating myself a little bit, but went through and did all that for Server 2000, 2003 Exchange, etc.
All right. So what version of Microsoft did you do MCSE in?
2000 and 2003.
So I started with NT3.5.
Oh man, yeah.
That's when I got
missed the
my
boat
MCSE.
on that one.
That's when I got my MCSE way back when. It was NT3.5. I think that was 98, 99, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Long time ago. But so how do you having gone through that 3 times, let's talk about that a little bit. And this is not to bash, but I think the comparison is fair. How did your study compare for this? How did you think the exam it went itself? Obviously we do a lot of things different. You didn't have to fly somewhere. We do it in a remote session like this. You can kind of sit in your house, be comfortable. I mean, be in your jogging pants, whatever you want to be in. I don't care. Whatever we kind of do some things different like that. But give a kind of an honest comparison for people that may have already taken CCIE that would know a little bit about what you're talking about from there and have a good comparison to what to expect here.
Okay. Yeah. Fair question. So I would say with the IE track, very much knowing the ins and outs of, it's just as much an exercise of, do you know these specific config lines and how quickly can you put them into the environment to then perform your validation? To the point where there is the specific, at least when I took it, the keyboard that was used in the lab was well known, and people would go onto Amazon, eBay, whatever, and buy that keyboard and do all their practicing on that keyboard.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I haven't heard that in a long time.
By
but
people,
yes,
I mean myself.
You're right.
You're
100% right. I mean, I
Yep.
used to coach guys in CCIE, and I'm like, yeah, you use a Mac. No. Go buy you a cheap Microsoft machine. Get used to the Microsoft machine.
Yes.
Learn how to do your shortcuts on the Microsoft machine, because otherwise you're going to be stumbling around with crap because you got to deal with that's what they're going to give you. I totally forgot about that, Mitch, but that was a huge point back then.
Yeah. And the other part was, if you have the ability to do so, go ahead and police the rate of throughput you get to your workstation to like LOL, BPS, virtually nothing. Because when you go to access that documentation in the lab at the time, it takes a minute to load up. So you better be used to having that delay. But yeah, there was so much focus and emphasis on knowing the configurations, being able to do it within the time that's allotted, because it's a short period of time, right? You got to know the content, but you got to know how to quickly configure the content. It was just also a heavy emphasis on that, and that's why people would do stuff like buy the keyboard, get the the 21-inch monitor. I think at the time it was 21. Shaping down your bandwidth or policing down your bandwidth that goes to that station when you try to open the guide or whatever. It's like, all right, this is the authentic experience. Here we go. But yeah, as far as the comparison to the L6, L7 process, I appreciated having the entire design component of the process prior to the piece where you actually go through and do the implementation, right? Because it really kind of vets out, is there an understanding of, someone once said to me, know the protocol, not the config, which really resonated with me in terms of it's much better to understand the protocol, where to use it, how to use it, but most importantly, when not to use it, what not to do. So then when it comes time to do the implementation, you have some idea what your guardrails are, how the protocol operates. And then it also makes you a bit agile. You can go from OEM to OEM, and if you know the protocol, you're good, right? You can always pick up the configuration later. And then once you've gone through and you go through the L6, you understand the different protocols, the design implications, you've proven that you can understand that. Then you go through and are, all right, cool, now go implement this stuff. Right. And I also appreciated that all the content that was being asked to configure, everything was covered in the L1 to the L5, all of it. Right. And then the L6 and L7, it was just, all right, take what has been learned and apply it now. There was very little, if any, if I can recall, acrobatics, right? Where it's like, go route this way, then do a backflip, triple axle, land on your feet, and then do a handstand and have the packet egress this port with this particular header, right? That wasn't really on there. None of the acrobatic type stuff, which I appreciated. It was more know the protocols, understand how to design them, know how to implement them.
Yeah, and I mean that was kind of what it's good to hear the feedback, and yeah, this is not overly scripted. I haven't talked to you since you finished. I did that intentionally with all of you guys that I'm doing interviews with because I kind of want to hear the raw feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice for me to kind of hear that because that's was the biggest challenge for us when we set out to do this is one, how do we test network engineering skill set versus facts that people know about products and protocols. It's drawing that line between what is the most important that you've memorized the commands to configure EVPN, or that you can explain to me what those commands do in that config. Because if you just memorize a list of commands that go in, you're only as useful as when that config was created and what solution it was created to solve. And while it's very similar that we do EVPN in most all of our customers now, without a doubt, it's the most typical solution we deploy. That does not mean that we do EVPN the same way for all of our customers because they all got nuances of things they got to solve. So if you just memorize, I need this command, this command, this command, and you have no idea what they do, then the slightest little curveball that you get, you're stumbling, you're out of water again. And this to me is what I've seen plague the later years of IEs. And I won't blame it on the program, but I'll just say as people I interview and people I talk to and people I see, it's like they stopped learning how to be network engineers and started memorizing pre-configured configs. I think that's the cheating world that's out there. You could go buy the exam copy and do that. And all I got to do is just memorize how to do that. I spent 6 months just practicing, type, or do it. I pass. Now, what would you validate? I get you into, I hire you, which I probably wouldn't because you probably can't make it through the interview. But if I do hire you and come in, I'm probably only hiring you off of your potential. It's not that I necessarily trust your skill set right now.
Right.
I might actually be the interview, scared of your skill set.
What in the interview? Like, what is a LAN? What are you talking about? What is this if? Yeah.
Yeah. And then and then you got to worry about that, and I think that's unfair to the companies that are investing in us and buying our equipment, looking to us to create a credential that tells them very simply. One of the things I did when I first got here was I just kind of went out with a couple guys in different scenarios. I wanted to listen to the customers a little bit, and one thing I found out is what we said earlier is fascinates me. I mean, people on the outside would think that, we're all getting $1 million bonuses because if you look at the talent pool that's here, you're like, oh, how do they get them all together? They must be paying them great. Yeah, not so much, but we're good. We're taken care of. I'll say it that way. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's not quite what people might imagine. It is just a group of people that are absolutely fascinated by being able to do their job as network engineers and architects. In the most purest of sense, we get to go solve problems, and we got protocols, software, and hardware that back that up, and we can trust it. And I think that's how I would describe us. But, customers turn around and go, how do I get Mitch? Well, you can't have Mitch. Mitch is ours. We like Mitch. Mitch does a lot of stuff here. You can't have Mitch. Well, how do I find someone like a Mitch? And to me, that was my charter. It's how do I create that and show them how I can create their engineers into a Mitch, into this or that. So that was a pretty big challenge because then it's not just getting you to memorize EVPN. It's actually teaching you how to do EVPN. It's teaching you how to be a network engineer again. And now add to that the things that I think a network engineer needs to know. No, I think it's great that you have 3 CCIEs, by the way. Congratulations on that. It's a hard feat. Met
Thank
quite
you.
a few people over the years that have many different ones, and to be in that area, you happen to have 3 that are still applying to everything you do today. That's great. You're still operating them in it. That means you're just as dangerous now as when you passed them. But when I look at other areas, and I look at what we're doing, well, why do you have 3? Do we not go into every customer and have to talk about data center and route and switch and WAN and, oh, by the way, and automation and security and Wi-Fi? We don't go into any customers where you don't have to be able to talk to all of that.
Right.
So maybe the network engineering skill needs to have all of those things. And I really wanted to kill the silos, because I think the silos are just, I feel sorry for Cisco and Juniper on that, because they started that world and it made sense when they started it. And now how do they get back out of it and go to a single one? That's really hard for them to change that machine now. We didn't have to do that. I'm creating a machine from scratch. I have no reason to create something I need to fix later. So we kind of went center down the aisle with that. Any other things that you think compare? I want to spend a second talking about that. You mentioned it. I don't know that everybody watching this would know that intuitively, but we do require that people go through L6 and pass L6 to even be eligible to try L7.
Yep.
It's the only one in the path that we have a prerequisite for is L7. You have to have L6. And we did that on purpose. Because I think the statement that you said was, I would like to know that you know when to use BGP before I know if you know how to use BGP. Because most of the conversations that I see in my career as an architect, what I see as our position here, even what I saw when I was in our competitors, is that is the most important thing at the highest level. Most customers are hiring an expert to be the lead on their team. If you're the lead on the team and you don't know when to use the right protocol, then where are we going?
Right. And just important,
right?
just as important knowing when not to use. Like, okay, maybe there's a whole bunch of, essentially don't try to squeeze juice from a rock, right? So there might be 5 million parameters we can tweak and tune to make the network 0.001% more efficient. Is any end user going to notice? And what impact does this have on daily operations and troubleshooting? Right. I am totally guilty in my career of over-engineering a few things and squeezing juice from said rock. And I would say the hit rate on it being worth it is roughly 0%. Right. So knowing when to use a protocol, what optimizations are really needed, and which ones are just like nice to haves, a tool to keep if needed. But elegance through simplicity is a definitely
100%.
big advocate for that.
I mean, out of all the protocols I've learned, Mitch, ISIS is the one I've known next to BGP the longest. It was one of the original I learned, because when I went down the track, you had to know like 27 other protocols besides IP and Ethernet. You had to know all the other ones. CLNS was definitely a big one at the time you learned it. And I say this to a lot of people by also following it up by saying, if that's the protocol I know the best, I have the most experience with it, I've known it the longest, and yet maybe 3 times in my career, 30 plus years, maybe 3 times have I ever deployed an ISIS deployment, because it's not about me. Everything breaks 2:00 Saturday morning, and preferably I'm drunk, on a Saturday morning. I've always used that analogy. I'm not really an alcoholic, but I always use that analogy. But I don't want to get on and do network engineering in that state. Saturday morning, 2:00 in the morning, and I'm drunk. I kind of not want to be
just
working.
To catch the drunk typing. Schwa is show.
So if I put in ISIS, I got to work Saturday morning, 2:00, and I'm drunk. If I put in OSPF, because that is what everybody in the ops team knows, and they know it well, then maybe they'll leave me alone and I can enjoy my Saturday night. And that simplicity of architecture is how I've always looked at it. And to me, it's a lost skill now. And we do this in L6. I don't care what protocol you use. I will tell everybody that little secret. You can create whatever protocol you want in the underlay outside of EIGRP, because we just simply don't support it. That's not our protocol. But anything else you want to put under, that's fine. None of them are going to fail you. What's going to fail you is if you can't justify to me why you did so. Right. And because I don't think we have a best practice here. Would I tell any customer that you should not do eBGP as underlay? Absolutely. That's the first thing I'm going to tell them. But Do we support OSPF or ISIs just as well? 100%. They're all recommended.
That's also something that I agree with you. We really at Arista don't seem to be like, oh, this is the best practice. This is the way you must deploy. I mean, we're going through a rewrite of the EVPN guide right now, and part of it is that exact messaging. We want to have multiple EVPN domains in the guide, and each one shows a slightly different deployment model because it comes down to choose the one that makes the most sense for the team that is going to be operating the environment. That is the correct answer, right? Some OEM can come in or some VAR, whoever. This is what I think you should do because this is cool stuff. Propeller cap, full effect. But it's not. If the first task or the first action when something breaks is 1-800-TAC, wrong solution, right? It's make it whatever makes sense for the team. And as far as not being really prescriptive with best practices and must do it this way, sometimes we find ourselves in scenarios where layer 2 leaves fine. We're not getting what we need, particularly out of maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze in the operationally with this EVPN fabric. What are we getting out of it? Maybe it's a smaller deployment or like a I don't know, pick a different design scenario. And if layer 2 leaves fine fits the bill operationally and technically, okay, cool, rock and roll. We'll go with that direction, right? It's not being heavily prescriptive. I think there's a lot of value in that. It's that you must do this or else. No, there's options here. We'll put them on the table. We'll discuss what makes the most sense. We'll go that direction. Maybe it's layer 2 leaves fine. Maybe it's EVPN VXLAN, or any number of different combinations.
Which is a really hard skill to teach. I mean, being an instructor for a long time, I will say that, inherently you take the world that we live in and we like to have 4 ways to do everything. It's always been that way. And then you take the people that typically are attracted to these roles are very engineering focused in their head, which means they like one way.
Oh God, I've heard that. Someone once told me they were partially joking, but what they said was there's my way and the wrong way. And I was like, okay,
right.
Well, I guess I'd be doing it the wrong way. Okay.
Well, I've been asked that many times, like, okay, well, you just told me you can build an underlay with eBGP and ISIs and OSPF, for example. All right, so what's the best way? Well, I've had to learn over the years to turn and say, well, if I'm going to be honest with you and help you, then I got to tell you that your question is flawed.
Yeah.
Because you can't just ask me that because I'm going to follow your question with a question for what scenario.
Yeah.
And they're all 3 great for different scenarios. I would use any one of them. It just depends on which scenario I need to deploy it out in. And that's a hard skill to teach because that means I got to tell you to be a master of all 3 so that you could use any at any given time. And yet you are going to turn around and find it in your sector, maybe in your role as an SE and you deal with certain type of customer sets. Maybe your answer is always BGP because that's what fits that sector. Other sectors, it may be something completely different. So it's an interesting skill to learn and really an interesting skill to test. So we kind of made L6 that way, where you just got to come up with a justification and tell us. We actually care less about the answer that you give us than we care about the questions that you ask us, because that's what we're testing.
Yeah, I do like the and you called out like it's a lot of engineers in this profession. It was like, hey, this is what I know. I am hammer, must find nail everywhere, apply hammer, right? I say that as being completely guilty of that. This is something I had to learn along the travels in my career was don't let your ego get too tied to a particular proposed technology or solution, right? So in other words, leave the polarizing stances to the pundits. Let them hash it out. And when you're in a design discussion, be completely open-minded that there are different ways to get this thing done. And again, whatever makes the most sense for the team that's going to be operating the environment and checks the boxes of what they're looking to accomplish, that's the right solution. Right? It might be at the complete antithesis of what I initially go in and propose, but if that team can operate it, because their environment, I'm the OEM coming, hey, you should do this. Okay, how many days am I going to be operating that environment? 0 minutes? 1 day, maybe, helping out? But the team that's operating it, when they walk away, they know it, they understand it. We've done knowledge transfer. We've done little workshops, going through the training, the different L1 through L5. Walk away. Everyone's super stoked. We know this stuff now. If it breaks, we can, we're comfortable enough to troubleshoot on our own. That's the right solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny now that I would say that what I just said is, most customers walk around like definitely would start my explanation of leaf spine fabrics and all this stuff with eBGP as the underlay. And yet for many years I've called BGP a resume protocol. Everybody wants to put it on their resume because they think that's going to earn them running, because BGP was usually required in really big positions and they were worth a lot of money. And I used to follow that by saying, what's the first rule in BGP? Because we got these 27 different rules of how to, the route matrix works. And all right, so what's the first rule? And then it was always a joke. It's and the first rule is don't use BGP. And if you get around rule one, proceed. But it shouldn't be one that you just want to throw out there everywhere. And yet now, where you and this was something I had to find even with my senior instructors that live and breathe this stuff every day. When I came in and all right, I'm starting to transition for them into Arista. I'm like, we use eBGP. That's it. Nothing else. eBGP, and on top of that is eBGP. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? You can't even do that. BGP needs a protocol. No, it doesn't. We're not doing it that way. We're doing it different, but we're not. I wouldn't say that we necessarily are using BGP the way that BGP was designed. We're using BGP in a different scenario, so it's a subset of BGP that you need to learn. You don't need to learn the whole protocol. You're not necessarily going to go run the backbone of Verizon right now or do something like that and get into. You're running a data center, a leaf spine. It's a fairly simple environment. BGP's capability here is not really doing 10% of what it was designed to do. This is not the internet. It's your data center, and yet it's still a very complicated protocol. So it should be used with caution, and it's interesting to see how that dynamics changed over time. All right. Well, let me ask you one more, and because I don't want to hold you too much, because we all
Okay.
got day jobs, right?
Yeah.
If you had any departing words for somebody coming through this, a resource to look at, you can put a plug for your own EVP guide.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. Any warnings, any things, to prep yourself for anything like that you want to pass on to somebody's watching this and saying, all right, I see these two guys. They don't look like the smartest human beings on the whole planet, but yet they both got it. I could probably do it. What words of encouragement would you do?
Words of encouragement would be the best way to get started is to just get started. And I would say looking for resources, whether it is the deployment guide for EVPN VXLAN. We've got a refresh of that coming out pretty soon. But the EVPN VXLAN webinars, EVPN MPLS webinars, out on Arista Communities, great resource to go read through some of the transfers of information or TOI documents associated with EVPN VXLAN, MPLS, whatever feature you're looking for. All good resources. Honestly, they're not exciting, but even just like the drafts and the RFCs, it's such a boring answer. I acknowledge that in real time, but it goes back to knowing the protocol, because these tests, parting words is like, these are transferable skills. I hope that's come through during the course of this entire back and forth interview, but the concepts learned and applied throughout this process of the level 1 through the level 7, they are all transferable skills. So maybe you go through it and maybe, after 6 months, for whatever reason, like, I'm not working on Arista anymore right now. Maybe I got some other project that's some other OEM. You've learned EVPN, you've learned VXLAN, you've learned MPLS. There are no point products along the way, along the path, right? So even from an automation standpoint, you're learning Git, right? One of those things that is quickly becoming a required fundamental tool. You have to be an expert, but know how to, clone, do a push, pull, fetch, like basic commands and whatnot. Learning that along the way as well. So not just network protocols and geeking out on those, which awesome, great, always enjoy that, but also learning automation, transferable skills along the way as well, because even those are, pick them up, take them anywhere with you. So well worth the journey. I had a great time going through all the content, doing the tests. I thought they were very well done. So kudos to you and the team. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I think that's excellent, dude. And I just want to piggyback on that transferable skill thing for a minute. Literally, there's not an Arista-ism to this. Yes, you got to know CloudVision when you come through this, because we do everything with CloudVision. We believe in CloudVision. But when you dig in and look at CloudVision, I wouldn't even say that CloudVision is proprietary. because we're using a lot of open source stuff to do things there. We're packaging it. We're not doing anything that's crazy and unique. What I love about CloudVision is I can run the show command in real time. I don't have to see what the show command normally shows me, which is whatever happened a few minutes ago. I can have it in a dashboard and it's showing me real time what's going on. I can see real time parameters. To me, that's not a proprietary thing. I just got a platform that is using a back end hook and going to run those same commands that I would type myself and presenting them to me for 20 different routers at the same time in one dashboard so I can manage from that central area. That's not so you don't need to learn how we do that in the back end. That's the proprietary bit. The front end stuff that you're doing, it's the same stuff you've been doing, just well packaged. So even that is not that proprietary. We don't force you to buy it. I mean, there are companies and customers out there we have that try to do their own homegrown versions of different aspects of that. And you can. We just think we're going to keep updating it every quarter. So we put the time and the money and the effort, and we're going to support it. Outside of that, if you got as good of a way to do it on your own, then by all means, we'd like to see it. We'll help you, that kind of thing. And same thing, this EVPN, BGP, VXLAN. I can't speak on whether or not or why, our competitors, the J's and the C's of the world out there, deviate from the standard version in these protocols. But if they do, then okay, those are the very few command set things that you'll have to go learn the difference in. Most of the time, it's what's supported. I mean, we got several customers where okay, we decide not to do an eBGP underlay because they're in a joint vendor solution and the other vendor, prefers to have OSPF in the underlay. Okay, so we'll match it. Those are little things, but how EVPN is working is still how EVPN is working, and that skill. I think it's really good in a multi-vendor scenario, but definitely, I will 100% stand behind. If you get L6 and L7, you'll be a good engineer, and I don't care what the shop runs.
Exactly.
Juniper, Cisco, or Arista.
Yep.
I really don't. I think I can stand behind that, and I think that's a cool thing. So, well, listen, Mitch, I really appreciate the time, the effort, dude. I appreciate all the help you've done. You've been a tester for me. Over the last couple of years when we roll these things out, you always give us a run for the money. I love it. It keeps us sharp. And we'll continue to do that, and definitely I appreciate you jumping on and doing this. And I hope to see you get on some of the boards so that you can be scrutinized in the next round that comes behind us.
Sign me up. No, I had an absolute blast going through the content. Thanks for making the time for this discussion. Had a lot of fun. Yeah, you guys have got an amazing team putting this content together and delivering it. So kudos. Cheers.
No, I appreciate it, man.